As we begin our exploration of color inside of Illustrator, it's very important that you understand the two basic color modes that you have available to you so you can get a better understanding of what they are and how they're used. Let's first start off with CMYK. CMYK is a color mode which stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, as represented by these colors at the bottom of the screen. CMYK is primarily used for print publications. Most of the things that you have that go out in a commercial printer, those have been printed with CMYK colors. The CMYK color palette consists of these four colors which are overlaid over the top of one another to display all of the colors in the spectrum that you have. RGB is comprised of three colors, red, green, and blue. These are the colors that are represented on things like TV screens, computer monitors, and anything like a tablet or a wireless device. RGB is primarily used for web or screen graphics, so anytime you're creating graphics that aren't going out for print, you want to make sure that you're working in the RGB color space. So again, the basic difference is that they are different colors, cyan, magenta, yellow, black, red, green, and blue. But the difference is CMYK is used for print, RGB is used for web or screen. Now that you've seen the difference between the two, hopefully you can get your next project started off in the right color mode for the right type of project. Before creating your first swatch inside of Illustrator, it's important to understand the different settings for color that you're able to change prior to getting started with the document or even after you have a document open, or how to modify those settings after the fact. Let's take a look at Illustrator's color settings panel and how to navigate it and exactly what everything means. In order to open up Illustrator's color settings dialog box, you need to go up to the edit menu and go down and choose color settings. Or you can simply use the keyboard shortcut of Shift-Control-K on the PC or Shift-Command-K on the Mac. Once you open that up, you are going to see that the color settings dialog box has a lot of information in it. It tells you at the top, for more information on color settings, you can search for Setting Up Color Management in the help document. The help documentation on color is actually really good in Illustrator, so I recommend reading through that if you have the opportunity. At the top, you'll be able to pick up the settings. In most cases, North American General Purpose 2 will be okay, but you may want to switch this, especially if you're doing a lot of print work, to North American Pre-Press. North American Pre-Press always has the right settings when dealing with print. Let's break this down by section. Let's start off here by the working spaces. The working spaces options govern the display of RGB and CMYK colors, and they serve as the default color profile for new documents that are created. Underneath here, you have the color management policies. The color management policies govern how colors are treated when you open a file that lacks a color profile, or when a file's profile conflicts with the currently chosen color settings. So for instance, if I have a color setting set for RGB to be Adobe RGB 1998, and I have the CMYK setting set up to the US web-coded SWOP v2, that means if I open up a file that conflicts with either one of these rules down here at the bottom, they will then help take care of that. So therefore, if I open up a document that has a different RGB profile embedded in it, this RGB rule says preserve the embedded profile. That means ignore Adobe RGB 1998 and go with the profile that's embedded in the file. Same for CMYK. If I open up something that's a different CMYK profile than the CMYK US web-coded SWOP v2, go ahead and preserve the numbers, but ignore the linked profiles. That means keep the CMYK values for all of the colors, but ignore the profile and add it to the US web-coded SWOP v2. For profile mismatches, you can have Illustrator ask you when opening what to do. That means if your profile doesn't match what you're currently set to, Illustrator will pop up and say, hey, what do you want me to do? Would you like to preserve it or would you like to convert it? You can also ask when pasting. So if you paste from one document to another, you can have Illustrator pop up and say, hey, this isn't exactly the right profile for what I'm set up for, so would you like me to preserve the profile that's here or switch to the profile that I'm using? For missing profiles, you can always ask when opening as well. You'll notice when you hover over these, you can get a description down in the description field at the bottom of the screen. This is going to be extremely helpful in that understanding exactly what these options mean. So if I hover over this, it tells me that when enabled, you'll be notified whenever the embedded color profile in a newly opened document doesn't match the current working space. Like I said, you can open up a document in Bruce RGB versus Adobe RGB. At any time, you can come in here and change your general color settings for Illustrator. You can also load color settings that someone gives you, like a commercial printer, for instance. If they have their own specific color settings they need, they can send those to you and you can load them by clicking the load option right here. You can also customize all of these settings and save them and send them out to other designers or other printers that you might be working with. At the bottom of this dialog box, you'll see an option called More Options. The More Options indicates the conversion options, like the engines that's used and the intent as well. If you're not very clear on what these options mean, my suggestion would be just to hide them for now. You can figure that out as you go along. For now, all you need are these options up here, and remember, use the hinting that's always available to you in these dialog boxes. Hovering over these will temporarily highlight them and show you a description at the bottom of the screen. In most cases, your printer, your client, or someone will tell you the colors that they need to use, but if you're not sure, the North American Prepress or the North American General Purpose are definitely a safe way to go. Once you have set up your color settings inside of Illustrator, hit OK and those rules are automatically applied, no need to restart. So before you get started creating your own swatches and working with different color palettes inside of Illustrator, take the time to go through your color settings and set them up properly. You might also want to check out the different files that you've been working on previously to make sure there's no profile mismatches or any errors like that. Once you've got all the color settings set the way that you need them to be, you can take comfort in knowing that you won't have any conflicts or any trouble with what you're seeing on the screen matching what comes out in the printed finished product. Once you begin working with objects in color inside of Illustrator, you may find the need to create your own swatches. Let's take a look through the process of creating both a global and a process swatch, and I'll also discuss the differences between the two and why you might use one versus the other. In this case, I'm going to be using the blue circle of this logo right here. In the blue circle, I've just opened up this file and I want to add the swatch to my swatches on the right hand side. In order to add this to my swatches, I'm going to come down and I'm going to click the new swatch icon. When I click the new swatch icon, it's automatically going to come up with a swatch name. The swatch name by default in Illustrator goes to exact values of the CMYK values, otherwise known as cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, that are associated with the object that you selected. In this case, my CMYK values are 93, 64, 1, and 0. You can even see that it kind of rounds up or down to the nearest number. For my color type, by default, it's set to a process color. Now I'm going to use the process color for now, and then later I'll show you what the global checkbox is used for. Underneath, I have my CMYK color mode, which is what I want to leave it as. And I'm actually going to name the swatch, let's say logo blue. Then I'll hit OK, and once I hit OK, you're going to see that the swatch is then added to my library. After I've added the swatch to my library, I can then go through and select other objects and apply that swatch accordingly. In this case, I have to get inside the group. So remember, to get inside the group, double-click to enter isolation mode. Then select your object and then apply your color. You don't have to ungroup your objects. I can double-click to exit, and now theoretically, all of them are using that particular swatch. But watch what happens here. If I were to go into this logo blue, let's say, and the client came back to me, for instance, and said, well, it's not exactly blue enough. So let's go in and change the blue. I'll double click to edit the swatch. I can pump up the cyan just a little bit. Maybe I'll even drag up the magenta a little bit to make it a little bit more rich. If I hit preview, you're going to notice that none of the objects on the screen have changed. But wait a minute, they all are using the logo blue color swatch, right? So how come when I change the swatch, none of these update? It's because I've created this simple process color and I didn't check the global box. The global box ensures that anything in your document that's currently using the color you're editing is always going to update once you create the swatch. You can think of a global swatch as sort of like a smart swatch. It remembers that it's attached to these objects. So therefore, anytime you update it, it automatically updates the objects as well. So here I'm going to click cancel and come back out into the document. I'll throw this swatch away and let's recreate it utilizing the global color swatch. I've already got it right here, so all I have to do is drag this over into the swatches panel and drop it, and it automatically creates it. If I double click it, it opens and allows me to make changes. I'll go ahead and check the global box and call it logo blue. and then hit OK. And notice when I do that, you'll get this little white triangle in the bottom right hand corner of the swatch, indicating that it is a global swatch. So it does act like a smart layer in Photoshop. Now I can select the pieces of artwork and apply that global swatch. Again, this grouped object on the end, I double click, then select it, then apply the blue, and then double click to exit. Now let's say for instance the client came back to me again and said it's not blue enough. Okay, so let's go into the global swatch and let's make a change. I'll pump up the cyan, rich it up a little bit with magenta, and maybe even darken it a bit with some black. If I hit preview, you can see those changes on the artboard. That's because they're utilizing the global swatch. And if I make a big change, like really dark it up, you'll see that they all change like that. Or if the client comes back and says, you know what, I don't really want it to be blue at all, then we can remove the cyan and we can make it red, say, and you notice all those update accordingly. Whatever you do in here, if you're going to if you're doing it to a global swatch, anything on the artboard that has the global swatch applied to it will automatically update as well. So let's go ahead and click cancel because I want to keep it with the blue. But just know that anytime you need to go in and edit that swatch, it's automatically going to update anything in the document using it. Now that you know how to do that, you can hopefully employ some global swatches into your artwork to make it easier to change things on multiple objects or even multiple projects. In many cases, when you're dealing with branding, especially logos and letterheads and things like that, you're going to run across the need to create something called a spot color swatch. This is a swatch that's used to reproduce the color exactly as it's supposed to appear each and every time. Famous brands utilize their own special swatches all the time, stuff like Coca-Cola Red and Pepsi Blue. They're iconic colors that you instantly recognize, and they wouldn't have you use any other color but that specified color. I'm going to show you how to recreate your own spot color swatches here inside of Illustrator. It's actually really simple. So once you have your colors like you like them, in this case I have this purple, the orange, and the gray, I'm going to add those to my swatches library and I'm going to turn them into spot colors. I'm going to go up to my window menu and I'm going to bring back up my swatches panel once I get the swatches panel back out on the screen, I can then start adding my swatches. I'm going to go into isolation mode for a moment so I get a hold of these individually. So to do that, I'll double click and then I'll select this gray color here. Once I have that done, I'm going to hit the new swatch button. It gives me a swatch name and it indicates here that this is a grayscale color. I'm going to change this to a spot color. The name is indicating to me exactly what level of gray it actually is. In this case, I'm going to call this logo gray and I'll hit OK. You'll notice as soon as I do that, a new swatch is added, and also there is a small dot in the bottom right-hand corner of that white triangle. Sorry. This indicates that it's a spot color because it's given a little spot. Same holds true for this A right here. It can create a new swatch, change it from a process color to a spot color. You'll notice as soon as you change from process color to spot color, global automatically becomes checked and is grayed out so you cannot turn it off. That's because spot colors are meant to be true all the way through. You're not supposed to be able to change them independently or anything. If anything is using the spot color throughout the document or that spot color is updated at any time, the global aspect is applied. Once I have that set, I'll name this logo orange and hit OK. And finally, I'll take this light purple color, create a new swatch, and I'll go ahead and call it logo purple and change it to a spot color. Again, global is applied and hit OK. Now for the text at the bottom, you'll notice it's currently still using the process value for this. I need to go ahead and switch that over to this logo gray because this is going to be a 3-color spot logo. So everything needs to be using one of these 3 colors. Since the text is utilizing the same level of gray as they are, I can go ahead and apply the spot color right there. Remember, these are global, so anytime during the branding process, if we happen to come in and make a change to this orange color in the middle, I can just come to the spot color, double click to edit, and then let's say we needed to make it just a little bit more orange. I'll drag the magenta slider up a little bit and hit preview, and you can see that it makes the change for me. Let's back that down just a little and hit OK. So now anytime I need to share my company colors with anybody, I can then just take these 3 swatches, export them, and send them to the person and they'll have the exact same representation of my branding as I do. That's the beauty of spot colors and a great way to keep your message consistent across all printed products. When you first begin to work with color inside of Illustrator, you'll notice that Illustrator provides you with several different swatches that are already pre-built into the swatches panel. However, they're not really organized with any rhyme or reason except for the two at the bottom. You'll notice here that I have two little folder icons, one labeled grays and one labeled brights. The grays folder displays all different levels of gray that I'm able to select, while the brights folder contains several bright colors. This is a great way to organize different swatches into small folders called color groups. I'll show you how to start organizing your colors so that you can better work with them here inside of Illustrator. So I'm going to drag out the swatches panel so you can actually see what's going on, and I'll expand it to give us the room. In order to create a new color group inside of Illustrator, you'll find this little icon here. It looks like a little manila folder. Once you find this icon, go ahead and click on it, and it comes up with the new color group dialog box. And I'm just going to call this branding swatches. These are all of the colors that are going to be used in my company's branding. So if I hit OK, it automatically creates a new folder for me, and I can then start to select objects like this circle here, and I can drag the swatch right there into the group. And same holds true for this. Click and drag it over, and if I misplace it, I can just drag it back down and put it in the group. Same holds true for my blue. If I drag it over this blue, I'm just basically putting them all in this one group, making it easier for me to get and easier to find. Once I've got them all loaded, you can see here by clicking the little folder, I can select all of them at one time, and I'm able to then utilize those, export them, send them to people, and it's just a much better way to keep your colors organized in the swatches panel. You can create as many of these color groups as you want, and I highly recommend that you do, especially if you're working on multiple client projects. You can have a new color group for every client that you work on. That way it's easy to find the color group for project A or project B. It doesn't matter how close the colors are together. You can just simply come here and hover over it, and it would actually say Company A branding, Company B branding, or whatever you choose the name to be. This is a great way to keep all of those colors separate but organized at the same time. So as you start to work with colors inside of Illustrator, start building up your color groups and see if that doesn't help you become more organized and definitely more efficient. There'll come a time when you're working in Illustrator, especially if you do a lot of client work, that the client simply won't know what color they need for any particular project. In that case, it's up to you to determine exactly what swatches you use for that given project. I'm going to show you how to utilize some of the built-in swatch libraries to hopefully alleviate some of that pain. As you can see here, I've got lots of different shapes here on my artboard. They are all individual and they've all got different colors applied to them already. So let's say the client didn't really know exactly what they wanted these colors to be. I might have to use the built-in swatch libraries to find something that I like. In order to access the swatch libraries, you're going to have to go to the swatches panel and find this little stack of books at the bottom left-hand corner. When you hover over it, it says Swatch Libraries menu, and when you open it up, you'll see things like art history, celebration, color books, color properties, corporate, default swatches, earth tone, foods, etc. These are some colors in here that are extremely helpful. For instance, color books. You can come in and actually bring up different Pantone libraries to work with. If you're a graphic designer, this is killer because you can come in and open all these different Pantone swatches and apply them instantly to your artwork. If you're not sure what Pantone swatches are, they're basically spot colors that are easily applicable to any of your artwork inside of Illustrator that you don't have to craft yourself. You can buy Pantone books and reference different colors in the books, and they look just the same way as they would here in Illustrator. So let's go ahead and open up something else inside of Illustrator. Let's say, for instance, that the client wants this to look a bit more organic. Well, I've got this library called Earth Tones, and I can open that up, and automatically I get all these different color groups with earth tones inside them. If I hover over them, you'll see one called Earth Tone 10, 9, all the way up. They're not really labeled descriptively, and the colors aren't labeled more descriptive either, but you can kind of look at them and see exactly if it works or not. I'm going to start using these right now. If I double click to enter into isolation mode on this object, I'll start applying colors. So for instance, I'm going to use this set right here. So I'll go in and select this object, apply color, and then I go through and select other objects and apply that swatch accordingly. Apply color this one, apply the next, and so forth. Once I've applied my colors, I can click away from it to see if I like it. If I don't, I can simply apply more. So in this case, I'll use the last swatch library here. The best part about swatch libraries is that they are all in harmony already. They are grouped logistically to look good, so utilizing these is a great way to ensure that your artwork looks consistent across all the different objects that you have. Once I have that done, I can exit isolation mode, and I can also close the swatch library if I want to. And now the artwork that my client wanted to be a little bit more earthy is just that. So the next time you're stumped on what colors to use for a particular project, dive into swatch libraries and see what you can find. Let's take a look at how to recolor your artwork using a color group. Alright, so I'll go ahead and marquee down to this face right here, which is the one in the middle at the bottom. And this first thing I want to do is create a new color group based on the last one we made, which is Angry Red Face. So I'll go ahead and I'll click on its folder to select that color group. And as you may recall, if I switch over to the color guide panel, that now becomes a harmony rule. But in order to employ it, I need to select another swatch that I've created in advance. And it's this guy right here, simply called green. And if I double click on it, you can see, especially if I switch the color mode to HSB, that we've got a hue value of 120 degrees, a saturation of 100%, and a brightness of approximately 33%. So I'll click OK, and now if I go ahead and switch over to the color guide panel, you can see that it has automatically generated a new group based on the harmony rule. So if I save it out just by clicking on the Save Color Group to Swatch panel and the icon in the bottom right hand corner of the color guide panel, and then I'll return to the Swatches panel, at which point I can see this new color group. Now, if I want to name it something better than Color Group 1, I can go ahead and click on the folder, and then I'll bring up the flyout menu and choose Color Group Options. And I'm going to call this one Green Eyes because it's going to turn the eyes green. And I'll click OK, and now I'll go ahead and marquee this emoji's face here. And then I'll click on the Recolor Artwork icon up here in the control panel. And all I need to do at this point, because I have 13 colors in my list that I'm going to change, and I also have 13 colors inside this Green Eyes folder right here, all I have to do is click on the folder, and just like that, I've completely recolored my artwork. At which point, I'll go ahead and click OK to accept the change. That's one way to work, but I can show you an even better way. As if it could get simpler than that, I'll go ahead and press Ctrl plus Z or Command Z on a Mac to undo that change, and I'll click off the artwork. And I want to remind you, if you were to double click on the folder for the Green Eyes group, that would bring up the Edit Colors dialog box, which looks almost identical to the Recolor artwork. Here's the difference. For one thing, we have an Edit panel, but we don't have an Assigned panel. It's dimmed because we don't have a selection, and meanwhile the Recolor Artwork checkbox is turned off, again, because we have nothing selected. Compare that to what happens if I cancel out and instead I just go ahead and marquee the emoji's face once again. And I double click on the folder to the Green Eyes group, and just like that I bring up the Recolor Artwork dialog box, which now has an available assigned panel, as well as the other panel we just saw moments ago. And we also have a Recolor Art checkbox, which is turned on. And without any further work, I've recolored the artwork. At which point I'll click OK to accept the change, and then I'll click off my artwork to deselect it, and that's it. All that you need to do is to take that color group from the previous and modify it as a custom harmony rule, and then select your artwork and apply the color group just by double clicking. Possibly the most satisfying use for Recolor artwork.